Yo, what's up, guys? Today I'm gonna be going over why Kisame beats Tobirama, and yeah, you heard me. This is an actually good scale putting Kisame over Tobirama. Obviously not Edo Tobirama. I'll explain more farther on why I think he's strongest in Edo. But basically, this is just not even few Kisame. I'm gonna be scaling base Kisame above Edo, and I think this is actually a debatable topic and an actually good topic and if you ask me why I would even believe this, is just Kisame is my favorite character. So let's start. So the first part of the scaling is just Kisame relative to base B. And I think this is like pretty obvious as you're seeing the scan right here. Um this is before he had even like absorbed any chakra, so like don't even try refuting that. And like B goes for a stab and Kisame basically blocks him. That's a sign of relativity. Then there's also the fact that he dodges his pencil, which is a projectile, which should be combat speed relative. And then B even goes on to state that without his Biju chakra, he would have already been dead. So all of this are signs of relativity, which would put like Kisame relative to base B at least. And the only like debunk I've actually seen or like contention with this point is like people try to like bring up like oh, Kisame could have absorbed like the fox's chakra, which makes no sense to me, to be honest, because we know like animals like in Naruto don't have chakra; they have nature energy. From what we see in the toads, right? None of the like animals have like chakra. We see like specifically Kaguya comes on and gives like humans chakra and turns them into shinobi. So like even if we like steel man this like point and say, oh, like the fox has nature energy, which is a big if, right? I don't think like Kitama would be able to absorb nature energy, since we see like the Pass who tried to absorb that nature energy, he became like a frog. So like the equivalent would be like Kitama turning into a fox here. Um, and he clearly said it's like not worth shredding, so it's like implied that he didn't even try like absorbing chakra from it. So now that we have like B relative to Jugo, I mean B relative to Kisame, we're just gonna say like B over Jugo. And then it's really easy to scale like B over Jugo just based off the fact that like he completely negs Jugo at the beginning of the fight when he fights the Taka team. There's also other feats like here he plays dodges on top. He dodges both Suigetsu and Jugo. He's also relative to Suigetsu as well. I mean not relative, but he should be above him as well. There's also this feat which he completely like perception blitzes Suigetsu, like I mean not Suigetsu, but Jugo. Jugo tries to come up like behind him and hit him, and he just blatantly just dodges, and he's like, where did he go? Completely perception blitz. The only like debunk I've seen for this is that people try to like bring up this scan where Jugo like sneaks up behind him and like actually connects him and like punches him like on the back and say like, oh my god, Jugo blitzed him. But this is completely unreasonable since we see like he literally came from the back that was completely off guard B, and I'd even like go to argue like B is somewhat relative to Sasuke, who is just stated above both Jugo once we get to. So it like B over Jugo is not even that contended. Um then we have Jugo relative to Darui. This is probably gonna be the hardest part in the scaling. And here we see like Darui attempting a blitz, Darui both A and Darui attempting a blitz on Sasuke. And then we just see like partially transformed Jugo just completely come out of nowhere and block Darui. And people try to argue like, oh, where was Jugo? But we actually see him right here. If you can see him like standing at the back. So he was relatively a lot farther away than the sword was to like Sasuke. So that would be like a feat that would prove like a Darui relative to Jugo. People also try like arguing that this is like an outlier and like Darui doesn't like scale to Jugo normally, but it's actually like fairly consistent, just based off the fact that like Suigetsu and Suigetsu and Jugo have a lot of feats, putting them relative. For example, this like he blows his head off, and then also he's like confident in like taking he's confident in like taking B and says like step back Suigetsu, even after he saw like Suigetsu get negged, right? So that's like a statement that might put like Jugo over Suigetsu. They also have like this feat where they clash together. So they're like overall relative, and also like B's blatantly above Suigetsu as well. So the skin also works if you want to use Suigetsu. And then it's consistent with the fact that Suigetsu was like is changing hands with Darui as well. So they should just be relative. Here's a bunch of feats in the middle. Here we see them clash again. And then finally we see him clash at the top left again. And people try to argue like, oh, but he was negged by like we see him like get negged by Darui and Darui wins. But he specifically says it's only because of the lightning chakra that he's like has the lightning weakness, which is like a narratively we see it all the time. Like Sugetsu's just getting like off screen by lightning. So yeah, like Jugo to like Darui is actually pretty consistent in the narrative. And then this is where things get kind of crazy. We see actually Darui, um, Darui relative to cloaked Kinkaku, and he actually dodges it, and he says like he's even like sarcastic about it, like oh well he's really cocky, and like just blatantly dodges his attack. But then again, if we look at the consistency of this, it's actually really consistent. With like Darui consistently blitzing them in base, both Kinkaku and Ginkaku, he was just blitzing them multiple times in base. So it makes sense that he's like relative to them and like his like here he dodges them pretty easily in like their cloaked state, so they should be relative to him. Then a debunk or like to this scaling that people try to use is they grab this statement where like the Raikage like says, "Oh, we can't stop Kinkaku and Ginkaku," right? And if like Kinkaku and Ginkaku scale over the Raikage, that will scale them uh above Kisame, right? For multiple reasons, like the Raikage relative to Four Tails B, and then base B, that would like scale them over base B, which makes the scaling not work. But this statement is actually taken out of context. So here he says like we won't be able to stop him, but then in the next scan he specifies why. He says, Kinkaku's power and chakra volume may be great. So he thinks he can't stop them because of chakra volume, right? And then he sends another tool which can seal them. So the problem is not like speed or power; it's just the amount of chakra they have to seal in their tools. So they send like this special tool right here, which is actually like a Sage of Six fast tool, and they're able to like seal them in that. And I also want to say like in that logic, that would put like Darui above like A, which makes no sense as like the Raikage is stated to be the strongest. Like here it states that the strongest shinobi in the village inherits the title of Raikage. So if we go by like if we like steelman that scan, that statement is contradicted by the fact that like Darui was reacting to them, and the Raikage should be over Darui, right? So it's like a most likely interpretation based on the context that he was referring to like the sealing ability and how he didn't think he would be able to seal him. He's also as he's probably referring to his Shinobi Alliance fighting Kinkaku, not himself, since he's not in the battlefield. Um and now that we've scaled them to like Kinkaku and Ginkaku, Kinkaku and Ginkaku should be relative to Tobirama, just based on the fact that Tsunade states that they drove the second Hokage to the brink of death, which basically means that they almost killed him, right? And people try to like say, oh, this was stated to be a surprise attack, but in the same sentence that it was stated to be a surprise attack, it's specifically stated to be a coup, right? And if we actually look at the definition of a coup, um, the definition of a coup is just like a sudden, violent, and illegal seizure of power from a government. So basically, all they were trying to do is overthrow the government. So, like, in context, if we're thinking of like a coup as a surprise attack, it's just them arriving and saying they're gonna take over in an unexpected setting, right? This setting would be the Kage summit, then both the second Hokage and the second Raikage we're having at the moment. Then I'd also like to add like surprise attacks by Kinkaku and Ginkaku are completely out of character. Like here on the top left, they specifically say that they want a good fight, and they're portrayed as this like more like Naruto characters who's just looking for a good fight. They love fighting, maybe like Goku, and they go around expecting to have a good fight. So like going and like attacking the Tobirama by surprise, like from behind, like and like weakening him, which would mean that that would like lessen the value of the fight and might not make it a good fight. So that like so that would be completely out of character. So in character and in context, it's not necessarily a surprise attack, right? Also in the top right of the scan, we also see that like, they describe him as like they think it's pitiful that they lost to the second Hokage on on the second battle because they had beaten him before, right? And they take pride in beating him, which implies that it wasn't like a surprise attack again. And then people also say like the second time like Tobirama like snared them, right, or killed them. But if we look at the definition of snare again, it's just like trap. So that's not necessarily like a trap is like killing someone with a trap. It's not necessarily like scaling over them. And again, like we know by a fact that like Tobirama, we know by a fact that like Tobirama was killed in that battle, and Kinkaku and Ginkaku should be the strongest ones out there, right? For multiple reasons. First, it's literally called the Kinkaku unit after them, which implies they're the strongest ones. And third, I mean, first or second, whatever, they scaled to the second Hokage via like surviving a fight with them, right? And then as I said, like I mean, they scaled to the second Raikage, and as I said, like the Raikages are stated to be the strongest in the village. So if they scale to the strongest in the village, they should be just above anyone in the village, which would imply that they're the strongest in their unit, and someone in their unit must have killed Tobirama. So they should scale above the person that killed Tobirama. It's also implied that they're relative by Tobirama himself, who like sees the Kinkaku unit and says like, "Holy shit, I'm gonna have to sacrifice myself." Even having like his top disciples and the next Hokage in there, he still thinks that they can't take on the Kinkaku unit and decides to like sacrifice himself, and it's like visually scared, and he knows specifically that he's gonna die fighting against Kinkaku and Ginkaku because he like assigns the Hokage position to the other person, which just implies that Kinkaku and Ginkaku are somewhat relative to Tobirama. And then like finally you prove this, it's just like there's like no other way to like say like Tobirama, like another like Tobirama scaling. So people might try to use Edo scaling, which you can easily refute. Just say like Tobirama is stronger than Edo for multiple reasons. So like the first main reason is that here at the bottom left we see that everyone's sealed in the Reaper Death Seal. Um, their souls shall tangle and battle with each other forever, right? And we know like if people are battling, it's the same as training. That's stated by B. I'll show that scan later. But if they're battling forever, they should be consistently getting stronger forever. Since that's like might argue, oh, but they're dead. That's still mental training. And if you don't know, like chakras are made up from mental and physical energies, which would mean that their mental state is constantly getting like a stronger, which would lead to them having more chakra as Zetos and becoming stronger, right? And there's like two like big refutals to this. So the first one is this one, that like that Tobirama states that he's been revived close to his original power, basically meaning that he's weaker as an Edo. But there's a really good easy debunk to this. At this point in time, Tobirama is being suppressed by Orochimaru, right? And we see this by this statement here. He said he holds up both hand signs, right? He panics and holds up both band signs, and he worries that they're gonna undo their jutsu. Basically, states he's suppressing them so they don't undo the jutsu, right? And then like people try to argue, oh, but he wasn't holding the hand sign here. We see in like the the middle, right? But if you can see, we don't see his left arm. And if you go a few pages before, we actually do see his left arm right here, and he's actually holding it up in one hand. So he's been suppressing them, and he's been suppressing them the whole time with his left arm. So that basically proves that Tobirama during that statement was suppressed. So a suppressed Tobirama thinks he's relative to his close power, which basically means that like if he's not suppressed, he would be above, which proves the point. And then there's this other statement by Madara where he says like there's a reason why you two brothers can't regain your full power, which basically means they're weaker, right? But if we look at the context of this scan, like Tobirama is like pierced by those like black chakra rods, right? And what's like that's what like prevent that's what's preventing them from like regaining their power as Edos, because we know Edos can regain power because they have limitless chakra and they have regeneration. The chakras are preventing them from regenerating, and this is like insanely consistent because if we see here, Hashirama is referring to both brothers, and Hashirama also was stuck with those black rods. Then other people try to say like, oh, Tobirama over Kinkaku and Ginkaku because he was stated to like boast the fastest speed of any shinobi, and there's two problems with this. We know that Madara died before Tobirama died, right? So that would so we Madara is the one who's stating this, so he never met Kinkaku and Ginkaku, right? And I like to argue that this is also referring to Flying Thunder God, to the speed of Flying Thunder God, because although like teleportation is not considered a speed by like as versus Battle Wiki, it is considered a speed in Naruto. We see this specifically when Obito describes Minato using Flying Thunder God as fast, so it is considered speed, and it's actually more consistent that it's referring to Flying Thunder God because this would mean like Tobirama is over Madara, which makes actually no sense in narrative, like scaling wise, like putting Tobirama both above Madara and Hashirama would just be crazy. And finally, there's one more scan I'd like to address, and it's this one. People try to say like this scaling doesn't work because like the shinobi fight and they become stronger in each fight. But I like to give the analogy like of running. So like training once isn't gonna do like anything for you, right? So like for example, if I train for 30 minutes, yes, I'm gonna become faster, but I'm still gonna be relative to myself 30 minutes ago, right? So if this shinobi are exchanging like short fights, let's say one day, right? They're not necessarily getting like huge amps, right? So for example, someone would say, oh, but Darui gets stronger from the Five Kage Summit to the Warwick because he fought in the Five Kage Summit and like fighting is stated overtraining, right? But like if we see the fight that Darui had, it's just a short fight. And again, like how much stronger did he get? And like the fact that it's a short fight doesn't it doesn't imply he got stronger at all. Specifically like in characters in Naruto, they have huge training arcs just to get like a little boost. So for example, Naruto went like 2 years just to gain like a giant Rasengan, right? It's like it's more like training over time, not specifically like um short periods of time where they get massively stronger. So this doesn't debunk anything in the scaling. And yeah, that's basically why Kisame next Tobirama.